Final Fight! Final Fight! Final Fight! Final Fight! Final Fight!
Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game SO Entertaining series on the Final Fight franchise, reviewing every single game in a retrospective fashion. And unfortunately, we reached the end of the series, and that means we have to play Final Fight Streetwise. And when I say this game has basically no redeeming value and is a masterclass in how not to modernize a classic franchise, I 100% mean it. Everything about Streetwise is hilariously bad, the voice acting is completely over the top in all the wrong ways, and none of the humor hits. This is basically what they thought people wanted back in the day when everything had to be gritty and a little bit more adult themed. So they took a beat 'em up franchise, moved it into 3D, took some of the characters and completely pivoted up their overall personalities and outspat Streetwise onto the ground with a thud. Before we get far involved though, do me a huge favor, down below hit like and subscribe and ring that notification bell, definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined to support the channel, we got a Patreon link down below as well. But what is Final Fight Streetwise? Obviously it is a beat 'em up, at least they kept the genre the same, but of course now it is in 3D because everything in the PlayStation 2 era had to be 3D or else it would not sell or get greenlit. And as far as the combat here is concerned, it really isn't the worst thing in the world. I'd say it's like a B tier beat 'em up as far as the mechanics go. Now would I rather play this over something like Spike Out or Slash Out from Sega? Absolutely not, but I can't say that the actual mechanics for the fights are terrible. You have your standard issue moves, you can upgrade over time. It is just basically a rudimentary 3D beat 'em up. But right off the top, you can tell that the entire tone of the franchise has completely shifted. Gone are the fun, bright colors from the arcade original and the two Super Nintendo games. Even Final Fight Revenge definitely still kept that charm. This is your classic Grand Theft Auto grittiness, and we just stabbed that man in the gut 3 times and cash flew out of him. This basically feels like, hey, let's try to make a game that feels like Grand Theft Auto without actually making an open world game whatsoever. But I think the number one worst thing about this game has got to be the storyline and the characters' personalities. They are no longer just classically good people. They live in basically what would be the city's completely worst neighborhood. They're involved in some sort of crime. It just really isn't a fun pivot. And the story does make a little bit of sense, but even the character design here, Cody wearing a prison suit, you have a dude in the back that basically looks like a bootleg Kirkland brand Tony Montana. It just doesn't hit in any way, and trust me, this is just the opening. It's going to get even worse. And unfortunately, because this was the PlayStation 2 era and it is a 3D engine, the camera is going to fight you basically the entirety of this game. You're going to have to constantly be swinging it around and try to find out where the enemies are. You're going to be getting hit from off screen. But I would say one of the biggest bummers is all of the weapons just don't really have much of an impact. The punches, the kicks, the grapples, they do, but swinging around a baseball bat in this game just isn't really that exciting. And for a game that's supposed to be about realism, at least in the gritty nature, you can literally pick people up and throw them like they're made out of cotton batting, not out of flesh and bones. You're never quite sure what the hell this game is actually trying to do. But my number one issue with it is it takes everything good about the original 3 games, that charm, that personality, that storyline, everything Capcom had worked so hard to develop, and just throws it all in the garbage. It is just such a strange game. Sure, you have a Final Fight cabinet in the background there, and honestly, if you could just walk up to that and play the original in the game, it would be such a better experience. But the original Final Fight is hiding somewhere in the game later on. So that makes the original Final Fight a bonus, the best game that you can play in Final Fight Streetwise. And I don't understand in this era why everyone thought this is what everyone had to play. Sure, the gritty, realistic nature was definitely popular, but companies basically chased their own tails trying to make a success where they really didn't have to. Had they just given Final Fight fans something they wanted, they could totally do a 3D beat 'em up. Just make it bright, just make it a little bit more colorful, make the combat a little better, and get rid of this absolutely asinine storyline, and people would have been a lot more excited about this, because even back in the day, this did not review well whatsoever. And I don't know what happened to Metro City here, but it turned into an absolute shithole from the first 3 games. But honestly, there really isn't anything about this game that makes it worth playing if you're not talking about the series in a retrospective fashion. Although the soundtrack ranges from decent to absolutely what in the hell were they thinking. So go ahead and listen for 45 seconds and I'll be right back with some more gameplay.
What you want, homie?
Hey, baby.
Money. Dude.
I mean, what in the absolute hell was that music, and how does it fit a Final Fight game? And honestly, you do need to play that roach kicking minigame, or else you're not going to get the next clue as to where to go. You have to go to the adult theater, and you have to have a fight out front, unless you don't feel like it, you can just completely run past it and hit the triangle button to open the door, skipping that entire combat sequence. And honestly, you can skip half of this game just by running past things, and that would be the most advisable thing to do. When we get up here to the projection room, don't get me wrong, I love a good joke, and I love adult themes in video games. It can be done well. Unfortunately, in Final Fight Streetwise, it's done the exact cheap and laziest way possible. And this was supposed to appeal to people back in the day, and she even wipes her mouth off from the activity she was just participating in. And the reality is none of these jokes land whatsoever. Even that box in the background proudly plays Blue Ball Video with the slogan, "Come get some." That's the type of humor that would have landed back in the Duke Nukem 3D games, and even then 3D Realms wrote the jokes better than anything you're going to see in Final Fight Streetwise. And you just basically have to freeze frame while some of the actual dialogue is held there, because it didn't really feel like animating the entire thing. But Final Fight Streetwise basically just took this franchise and absolutely destroyed it, and we have not seen a new game in the franchise since then. That is how bad this game was. Think about it that way. Final Fight 2 and 3 were amazing games, and even Final Fight Revenge, while not the best thing in the world, had some charms. Then you move to something like Streetwise, and the franchise ends. It's that bad, and you just basically have to chase this dude around his office, trying to corner him. This is the entirety of the fight, and then when you finally actually do get him in one spot, you can just shank the ever-loving hell out of him, and he's totally fine. And then you move on to a mini game where you have to crush his head in a door. I kind of at least appreciate this. It is a fun quick time event mechanic, but again, this game is just rife with some of the dumbest jokes, some of the worst conceived plot lines, and some of the worst mechanics you can think of. And trust me when I say the voice acting is not good, it is particularly bad. So go ahead and listen, and I'll be right back.
All right, I'll talk, damn it! The stiff's in the warehouse behind the diner. He's waiting to see me.
If you're lying to me, I swear to God, I'll...
I ain't lying. Take the damn Bible. That'll get his attention.
Not only is the voice acting completely terrible, but it's also a little bit hollow sounding, like the recording isn't even that great. Now, there is an arcade mode in Final Fight Streetwise, and trust me, it's the only one I could possibly even get remotely close to recommending, because it basically takes the entirety of the storyline out and just makes an arcade beat 'em up out of it. Unfortunately, it's still going to struggle from the same 3D camera issues, it's still going to struggle from the same rudimentary B-tier gameplay, and as minute you get out of this diner, you're going to be surrounded by so many enemies that can absolutely just stun lock you and kill you without you ever being able to get up, that you're going to find that it is not fun either. And you only get 3 lives. Once you run out of those, the game is over, and you basically have to come back in later on. But at least the developers tried to make a proper beat 'em up out of this. But again, there's so many other candidates in this genre on PlayStation 2 that are so much better than this, and it is just such a disappointment to end a retrospective on a game that basically killed the entirety of the franchise. Normally on a retrospect, there's some games that are obviously going to be better than others, but it really is hard to point to something that you can just say is absolute A-tier garbage. But Final Fight Streetwise is exactly that. This game has no redeeming value whatsoever. It is not colorful and charming like the original games, the combat isn't as good, the music isn't as good, it isn't fun, and the overall storyline is just incredibly stupid and hokey. They were trying to be so mature and make jokes, but all they really ended up doing is looking like children in this game. And I would say of all the retrospectives I've done on the channel, this is by far the game I hate the most. And even though you have this arcade beat 'em up mode that takes all that story out, again, the mechanics are just a little bit garbage. You are going to get stun locked, and you're basically going to take some deaths, even though you were never able to even actually get up off the ground. So is Final Fight Streetwise worth playing? Absolutely not. 0 out of 10 recommend. If you want to know where the franchise went and how it went wrong and why you haven't seen a game in a very long time, then definitely play this. You'll 100% understand why there hasn't been a Final Fight 4 for a very long time. But I do hold out hope maybe one day Capcom will realize they should let another developer take a crack at it and give us a new 2D game, a la Streets of Rage 4, but you never know. Maybe by the time you watch this video it's already been announced. But short of that, this retrospective is done, and unfortunately we had to end it on Final Fight Streetwise because it is the last game in the franchise and it is absolute trash. I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.